For those of you who are new here at Mosaic, every year we take one Sunday that we designate Foundation Sunday. And this is the day where we focus on the why. The why of what we do, and the what of what's next for us in the future. This is the day where we ask for a concrete decision of action. That's our commitment to giving, to create a foundation for the year to come. Last year, when we came together, all of us together gave so much money that we were able to start the new year with $500,000 in the bank, which is amazing. But when we gave together at the end of November, beginning of December, we had no idea that we were going into January facing the fires. We cannot predict the future. So much that will happen tomorrow will be outside of our control. And that's why it's so important in the present to make decisions that reflect our values, that reflect the intention and purpose that God has given us in our lives. And so today I want to take a few moments and focus us on this. But in a few moments, I'm going to invite you, no more than that, I'm going to challenge you to join us in giving sacrificially and generously above and beyond what perhaps you even expected. And I know there's always that danger that someone has stepped into this experience for the first time in their life, searching for God. And the one little voice in their head always says, all churches do is ask for money. You just happen to be here on that Sunday. But it's not all we do. It's actually what we do not do enough. Because the other 51 weeks, we help you connect to God at such a deep and profound level that Jesus becomes your greatest source of hope and life and love. And as I was reflecting on this day, a very peculiar passage kept coming back to me, and it frankly did not fit the subject. Because there are a lot of great passages in the scriptures if you're unfamiliar with the Bible. There are incredible passages on generosity. Incredible passages that are just point blank about money. Incredible places in the scriptures that will talk about the sacrifices that we need to make, the way you build a future. And those are the passages that I would be most inclined to depend on today. But a different story kept coming to mind, and it just kept coming back, and I kept trying to push it out of my mind, and it just kept seeping back into my consciousness. And so finally, I think I came to the realization that maybe God was talking to me while I was thinking about talking to you. So in Luke chapter 5, there is this particular moment in the life of Jesus, beginning in verse 17 through verse 26. I'm going to read it to you. It says, one day Jesus was teaching, and Pharisees and teachers of the law were sitting there. They had come from every village of Galilee and from Judea and Jerusalem. And the power of the Lord was with Jesus to heal the sick. Some men came carrying a paralyzed man on a mat and tried to take him into the house to lay him before Jesus. When they could not find a way to do so because of the crowd, they went up on the roof and lowered him on his mat through the tiles in the middle of the crowd, right in front of Jesus. When Jesus saw their faith and the property damage, he said, friend, your sins are forgiven. The Pharisees and the teachers of the law began thinking to themselves, who is this fellow who speaks blasphemy? Who can forgive sins but God alone? Jesus knew what they were thinking and asked, why are you thinking these things in your heart? Which is easier to say, your sins are forgiven, or to say, get up and walk? But I want you to know that the Son of Man has authority on earth to forgive sins. So he said to the paralyzed man, I tell you, get up, take your mat, and go home. Immediately, he stood up in front of them, took what he had been lying on, and went home praising God. Everyone was amazed and gave praise to God. They were filled with awe and said, "We have seen remarkable things today." This encounter with Jesus is a very peculiar one for so many different reasons, but reading a story is in many ways like watching a great film. You are brought into the story if you identify with the protagonist, if you become a part of the story of the hero, hopefully not the villain. And the ability to navigate the story is actually created because you see from the vantage point, the perspective of the person that the story is about. And here in this particular moment, the story is, I guess, fundamentally about Jesus and the encounter he has with people, but then the story becomes, in many ways, more precisely about the paralyzed man. But there is another sub-narrative in this that is really peculiar. It's the story of the guys that are carrying the guy who could not walk. I always in my mind picture 4 of them, because if you're going to carry a mat well, you either need 2 or 4. And so I, in my mind, have always pictured 4 men who carried their one friend. And we have no description of them. We have no story about them. We don't have their names. They're basically all lost in anonymity. We don't really know the name of the paralyzed man, but at least he gets a description. I'm the paralyzed guy. But really the story isn't about the man who's paralyzed, because he wasn't the initiator, the activist, the agent in this story. And it isn't really so much about Jesus, because Jesus is going to be Jesus. He was going to do Jesus kind of things with whoever was there. And my question on this Foundation Sunday is really related to those who carried the mat. What if success should not be defined by how much we accomplish, but by how many we take with us? What if this is one of those extraordinary moments where we get to see what life looks like when we live it as if it mattered? And so I have a description for these anonymous individuals. They're the makers of the way. Because it tells us in verse 18, some men came carrying a paralyzed man on a mat and tried to take him into the house to lay him before Jesus. When they could not find a way, to do this because of the crowd, they went up on the roof and lowered him on the mat and removed the tiles in the middle of the roof and dropped him in the crowd in front of Jesus. And I have to say, every time I read this, I know those guys are Latinos. I just know. Because we always find a way. You can try to stop us, but we always find a way. And I think there's something fascinating here in this moment where most of us would just give up. Even if we were well-intended, even if we had wanted to bring our friend to Jesus, because what you have is a story of a person who has a desperate need and a person who can meet that need, and all of these obstacles between them. And the person who desperately needs their needs met cannot overcome the obstacles between him and the person who can meet their needs. And so they need someone else to become a maker of the way. And I am absolutely convinced this is the story of all of us. This is the story of all of us as human beings. This is the human story that we all desperately need to find our way to Jesus, even when we do not know who Jesus is and we do not understand that's who we need. But there's so many obstacles. There's the crowd. There's the house. There's the roof. And I've met so many people in my life where where you can see there's a deep longing to find the meaning of life, to find their purpose for existence, to find if God is real, to understand if Jesus is really who he said he was. But there's so many obstacles for them. And unfortunately, so many times, the obstacles they identify were created by the religion that carries the name of Jesus. So many times the conversation begins with, well, I used to go to church. Or I grew up in church, or my parents were very religious. And rarely does that precursor bring a positive outcome. It's usually rooted in the reasons why they do not believe, why there's so much separation between them and Jesus. And if we want to understand what Foundation Sunday is about, it's choosing to become the anonymous people who carry the mat and make the way and find our way to get the person who desperately needs God through every obstacle that gets them at the feet of Jesus so they can have their deepest needs met. So I have a few questions for all of us today. And the first one is a little tricky, can feel a little judgy. But I don't want it to be judgy, I just want it to be identifying. Are you the one being carried? Because you really can't get to the next part of the story if you don't figure out where you are in the story. I had that happen to me one time in the most visceral way, because one of my favorite films of all time is Braveheart. I still love Braveheart. Mel Gibson was amazing. The story was brilliant. Randall Wallace wrote a masterpiece. And one of the few autograph scripts I have is from Randall, because I'm just such a huge fan. And we even went to Scotland. We did, to see the land of William Wallace. It was awesome. I have a sword in my house, in my hallway. That's an exact replica of William Wallace's sword. So yes, I'm deeply committed to this legend. But what happened when I was watching the film at the Academy of Arts and Sciences is I'm William Wallace. It's so easy to be pulled into that film. It's clearly I'm Wallace. He was off to Rome to study, he comes back. I'm so clearly William, and we're the heroic story in the middle of the story, and then all of a sudden the story develops, and the story develops, and the story develops. We're introduced to Robert the Bruce. And we went to Scotland, we realized Robert the Bruce is more famous than William Wallace. Robert the Bruce is more significant than William Wallace. In the end of the story, it's Robert the Bruce who becomes the significant carrier of the story of heroism. But what happens in the middle of the story is Robert the Bruce betrays William Wallace because he's a coward, because he was self-serving, because he cared more about his own survival and his own success than he cared about honor and bravery and the freedom of others. I think the reason the film had such a profound impact on me is that halfway through the film, I heard myself ask myself the question, are you Robert the Bruce, pretending you're William Wallace? How many times have you been the one who didn't do what was right because of lack of courage or bravery or a wrong definition of success? I think in so many of our lives, we think we're the hero, but we're the ones being carried on the mat. We think we've made great progress. Look how far I've come, but you didn't notice other people were carrying you along the way. And frankly, this is as true in our own spiritual journey. The reason we're here in this moment, in this location, is because other people sacrificed so much to make this happen. They're the ones who built the mat and carried us. One of the most interesting dynamics on the financial scale, and I'll show you a few pictures in a moment, but I just want to give this as an overarching narrative, is in our years in Hollywood and in our years in Los Angeles, even before the pandemic, before the quarantine, when we had our highest attendance, and we had around 13,000 people in all of our campuses for Easter Sunday, it was insane. And what we realized is that in Hollywood, the epicenter of heroic stories, the giving in our community would go up zero when the increase in attendance went through the roof. Because most of the people who came to church were the ones on the mat. They were grateful we were there. In fact, if you asked them, they would tell you how much Mosaic meant to them. They were grateful that people were investing in their life. They were grateful that there was a building. They were grateful that there was air conditioning. They were grateful there were bathrooms that worked. They were grateful that there were kids programs. They were grateful for everything that was provided, but it never occurred to them that they should sacrifice to make it happen for someone else. And frankly, across the board, I saw these statistics this week that of evangelicals who identify themselves as followers of Jesus, only 13% of them ever give. That means 87% of people who believe in Jesus are on the mat, not carrying the mat. But 75% of people who identify themselves as believers in Jesus never give at all. And here's the crazy thing. The way God calls us to do this beautiful thing we call church, is that we give without expectation of return. We give for the very people who may never give. We'll give so that the people who can question our motivation without ever giving can actually be served. Because we are the people who are the makers of the way. And I've loved this about you as a community, because there are so many of you who have given so faithfully for so many years. And you know, when we were at the Mayan downtown, the coolest nightclub in America, I mean, there wasn't a cooler church in the world than Mosaic. 1,000 pagan gods carved into the building. Aaron, growing up there as a little boy, instead of saying, I'm going to church, would say, Mom, I'm going to the club. And Kim would say, you're not going to the club, you're going to church. He said, yeah, I'll see you at the club. And it got worse from there. We went to worse clubs from there. But at that Mayan, if we had 1,000 people, the average giving would be $1 a person. And then we had a really boring kind of, steady, good people, healthy people, people who have families and have jobs, and you're just not that interesting, right? Just work every day and take care of your kids and your home, and you are the ones giving all the money to finance the cool. And no one would point to your campus and go, that's the most important expression of the church in the world. But you financed what other people pointed to. But I have to say just straight up, what we did at the Mayan, what we did at the Glam Slam, what we did in Hollywood, what we did in all these cool, edgy venues, they were just the mat carrying the paralyzed. They were never the ones carrying the mat. You have always carried the mat. So are you being carried? And by the way, it's okay if you are, because no one gets there alone. No one gets there alone. Man, there have been times I've needed to be carried. How about you? I remember years ago we were playing basketball, and one of my 10,000 injuries, I just tore my ankle, and I am laying on the ground in absolute writhing pain. And Jacob Williams' dad, Ricky, comes up and just scoots me up off the ground like I'm like a toy. And Ricky never broke a sweat, didn't even look like he was trying. He just carried me into my house. And I'm like looking into his eyes. You are the man of my dreams. You literally sweat me off my feet. But I know what it's like to be paralyzed and not be able to move forward alone. Not just physically. I know what it's like to feel that way emotionally, spiritually. That's why we keep telling you life was never intended to be lived alone. You cannot do this with other people. And there are times you're just the paralyzed person on the mat. And it's okay sometimes to go, I'm just damaged right now. I need people, I need help. And it may feel embarrassing, but we've all been carried. And before I met Jesus, I had people who carried me. They carried me into faith. They carried me in all of my obnoxious self. And as much as I would berate them for believing in God, they just kept on loving me. And I would argue. I was such an arguer. I'm not anymore. I'm different now. But back then, if you believed in God, I would fight with you and convince you there was no God. And if you didn't believe in God, I would fight with you and convince you there was a God. I just loved the fight. Maybe I love the win, but it doesn't matter. We're not looking back, we're looking forward. And I was just so irritating, defiant, combative, rebellious. And they just kept loving me. They just saw me as the paralyzed guy psychologically. I was paralyzed emotionally. I was paralyzed as a human. I was so frustrated with the emptiness of my life that I just wanted to suck the emptiness out of everyone else's life, because it wasn't right that your life made sense when mine didn't. And they didn't throw me out. They just carried me in. They found their way through the crowd. They climbed up to the roof. It would be hard to climb up a roof with a paralyzed guy. You can't say, carry your weight. See, and this is what we want to prepare for. See, the reason I'm going to ask you to give sacrificially and generously and beyond your wildest expectation is because we have a paralyzed world that needs us to build mats and carry them. And if we have the capacity, we should do it. So my first question is, are you being carried? And it's okay to be carried, but it's not okay to get comfortable on the mat. Your goal needs to be to get to Jesus so that you can get up and walk. And I guess my next question is, who are you carrying? Your life cannot be only about you. And this is the tricky thing, even in our faith conversations. I know that if I can help you live the life you long for, live the life God created you to live, you'll keep coming back. Because we are inherently self-indulgent as humans. I remember when I was writing one of my first books, Uprising, the president of the publishing company, Nelson Publishers at that time, said to me, all right, I read the manuscript, but where's the me hook? I said, what? He goes, the me hook. I'd never heard that phrase. I go, what is a me hook? He goes, every reader is asking, how is this about me? How does this help me? Where this book is on character, there is no me hook. It's kill the me and give birth to the we. And so they said, then it won't work, because people only care about themselves. Now, I know we're supposed to accept that, but can we accept it and fight against it at the same time? Because there has to come a turning point in your life where you go, it's not about me. It's not about what I can get out of this. It's not about the prayers God wants to answer for me. It's not about just my spiritual journey. It's not just about my relationship with Jesus. There has to come a point in our life where we go, What is the contribution I need to make in the lives of others? There has to be a shift where our measure of success is not how much we accomplish, how much we get, how much we do, how much we win, but how many people have we served? Have we helped? Have we carried with us on the journey? Those 2 to 4 men, they never had their names written in the scriptures or in life. But maybe that's the best part of the story, is that the only name we actually know is Jesus's. See, maybe the center of the story isn't supposed to be the paralyzed guy who walks, because who doesn't want to interview him? But I'm certain no one wanted to interview the 4 that carried him there. If we spend our lives measuring the value of our existence based on what other people say about us, we'll have a really broken moral compass. You do it because it's right. Now, I do think there probably was an underlying relationship there. I think this paralyzed man had people who believed in him, people who loved him, people who cared about him. It tells you something about the relationship there. But I actually think it tells you so much about those friends who, when they get to the house and they realize there's a massive crowd and we can't get inside, that's where most of us would cut bait. Well, we tried. You ever done that? Your boss gives you an assignment and you kind of try. And other descriptions entered my mind. And you give up without actually really powering your way through. It's amazing how when you care about something, you find a way to get it done. When you do not care, you use any excuse to give up and quit. When you love someone, you do not give up. Today is the day we decide how much power and strength, how much resource we have going into the new year, but it's really much more human than that. Today we decide how much we're going to care about people, how much someone else is going to matter to us, someone who doesn't make any investment and may never make an investment here. Can we do what is right without the thank you? Can we do what matters without praise or even acceptance? Can we just do it right because it's right? So I want to ask you, who are you carrying? Who right now desperately needs Jesus in their life? But the obstacles are getting in the way. And how hard are you willing to work? How creative are you willing to be? It's interesting that Mosaic has been known around the world for its creativity. And people would say, well, how are you always so creative? They go, because creativity was never our focus. It was always people. See, in a town like this one, when you have all these friends who are Buddhist atheists, they're Jewish agnostics, they're like Tibetan Buddhists from Indiana. Like they're just, you ever meet people in LA and go, how did you become this? Right? Everywhere I go, I see signs, I'm a Scientologist, and I go, I don't know if you should be saying that out loud. Like, if you ever sat down and had conversations with people in LA, you're like, wow, how did you ever come to this belief system? How did you ever get so broken? How did you ever become so self-indulgent? There's a lot of conversations in this city. We were not being creative to go, oh, look how creative we are. We were being creative because we were sitting around going, how do we reach these people we love? How can we create an experience that will make sense to them? How can we talk about Jesus in a way that doesn't create ick or cringe or anger, or defiance, hatred, unbelief? How can we do this in a way that reaches people who would never be reached? We are the people who find a way through the crowd onto the roof. And it's just tile. Who cannot replace tile. And they cut the line. I love that. I wonder how many, we should do a personality test here. When you drive your car and there's a long lane of cars on the right to get off on that exit, are you the person who gets in line? Or are you the person who speeds past all the cars, waits for that 18-wheeler that cannot start fast enough? Not that I've done this. And then you just zoom right in. While your wife looks at you and saying, "This is wrong." You just need to read the Bible. You cut the line. When someone's life is on the line, when someone you love needs to get to Jesus, you do what you have to do. Now, I want to be so clear. Over the years, we got rid of pretty much every tradition that was ever valued in the church. And you can imagine there was a lot of frustration and anger. I didn't remove traditions because I hated traditions. I removed traditions because I loved people. And I cannot tell you how many places I would go to where the churches were old, like my age. And they had no young people. And I would look at them and say, the reason you are in the condition you're in is because you loved your tradition more than you loved your children. And if you want to change your future, you're going to have to love your children more than their traditions. Who cares? When people, over the years, people, now the music is kind of awesome, but for a few years it wasn't great. And people would complain, "I don't like this kind of music." And I go, who cares? What matters is, do all your friends who don't know Jesus, do they like it? Does it help them connect to Jesus? And really the question I have, if you love Jesus, who cares if it fits you? What matters is, does it open the roof and drop people at the feet of Jesus? That's what matters. So I'm going to ask you to remove some tiles, and it may be from your own bank account. Because sometimes we hold on to what God gave us when he gave it to us to give it away. And one last question. What would you do for the people you love that still do not know Jesus? What are you willing to do for them? See, that's to me the central question of the church. That's the question I want to ask myself as long as I have breath. What am I willing to do to help people meet Jesus? How am I willing to figure out getting around the crowd and getting up on the roof and removing tiles and dropping them right at the feet of Jesus and go, I don't know how this happened. This is amazing. It's the most wonderful experience when someone will come to you and tell you, it never made sense to me, but now I see who Jesus is. It's beautiful. I know I shared this, a part of this, but when we were in New York a few months ago, and it was one of our first Sundays doing Mosaic, New York, and people are getting used to the way I communicate, which I guess takes a little effort, and this woman came up to me very upset. She was clearly a Christian. I could tell because she was upset. And she said, you do not communicate the way the pastors communicate. Like, very upset. She goes, I want to know why you don't communicate the way pastors should communicate. Is what she was really saying. And I said, well, I understand what you're saying. And I was trying to find a shortcut because I had a line of people and I didn't want to have a long conversation. I said, maybe it's because I should have been a physicist, but I became a pastor. She goes, that makes sense. I don't know how that made sense, but that made sense to her. And I have never in my life answered that question that way, ever. She moves, the woman right behind her was there and she said, hi, I want you to meet my son. He's a physicist. What are the chances of that ever happening? And this young physicist, a real one with the actual intellectual capacity to be one, and he said, my parents are Christians, and I've always been an atheist. And I love my parents and I honor them. I've just never had a path to faith. He said, I want to thank you because today you gave me a path to faith. See, yeah, you can clap, but it's not just from a conversational level. Sometimes it's simple things. I know people, like, I see on Instagram, why does this guy dress like this? Whoa, where'd he get those pants? I mean, it's crazy to think, like, how about my talk? Was my talk interesting? Weird fashion choice. But when I came to LA, Kim and I, we spent 10 years working with the poor. And I dressed very different then. Like a pair of blue jeans, a t-shirt, tennis shoes. That was my wardrobe. And when we came to LA, this young, amazing girl who later married a young, amazing guy that both came to know Jesus in our community, who was at the fashion school, came up to me. She said, if you're going to reach my friends, you can't dress like that. I mean, just like so honest, right? And I like what? Like that, like you. She goes, we love you, but we can't bring our friends because of you. And I said, okay, I don't care. This is just like draping. It's my soul that matters. Maybe my brain, the combination. And I said, well, can you help me? I'm like, I need your help. And she goes, okay, let's meet. And we literally started going from store to store. But I said to her, because I'm a learner, I said, I don't want you to tell me what to buy. I want you to teach me how to see. I want you to teach me how to see fabrics, how to see patterns, how to see stitching, how to understand the nuances of why one color blue is not right and one color blue is. I want you to teach me why certain fits work and certain fits don't. And she mentored me to see design. And it turned me into a designer because I saw the beauty and elegance of the story it communicates. But I didn't care. See, I think sometimes we think, everybody just wants to be their own thing. No, everything we do here has an intention behind it. And it's really about what would you do for them? Pretty much anything. If the world suddenly only knew French, I would speak French. I wouldn't go, I'm going to speak English, and if you want to find Jesus, you need to learn English. You move every obstacle between people and Jesus. That's who we are. All right. So I've gone way past my time, but I want to walk you through the ask. I want you to see this with me. What's happened this past year. Okay, I'm going to need you to go with me. All right. Our weekly attendance right now is around 2,300. Every Sunday, we have around 302 kids in 2025. We've had over 5,500 people come to know Jesus. We can applaud that. And 422 people who follow Jesus in baptism. And some of them, and some of them in the Pacific Ocean, so you know they were sincere. And our overall reach as a community of faith, as Mosaic, has been over 1 million people in person and online. Isn't that incredible? And this is the one that I love too, because we have our amazing Mariah Goss and the whole MSC community. Over 56 million downloads, Mosaic MSC. Incredible. Let's go to the next one. I want to remind you that we're Mosaic in LA and Mexico and Ecuador, New York City, London, and it looks like we have an emerging Mosaic in Chicago, unexpected, but Chad Brokaw is unstoppable. I also want you to realize that we've accomplished so much around the world through Mosaic Global, which is really our humanitarian and human part of our community. We've built teacher housing, installed electricity. We brought electricity to a village that had never had electricity in its history. We changed history for them. We brought a school there that was over $1 million project for the Malawi Children's Center. And we also have had a project in Nigeria. And I want you to see the budget for this year coming up. Last year, our budget was $6.9 million. This is the way it's broken down. In case you want to know, about 50% was personnel, 18% facilities, 23% ministries, 7% operation, 2% outreach. This year, we're making a slight adjustment outward because we're going to grow. We're going to grow both in our number of people, but we're also going to grow in our generosity and sacrifice. So our projected budget is $7.5 million. We're going to have a lower percentage of personnel, 43%. Facilities, 19%, ministries, 13%, operations, 11%, and outreach is going to be 13% because we want to make sure that we make this a spiritual reference point across the entire city. I got a DM this week from someone saying, I just showed up at Mosaic in Hollywood. I didn't know the church closed. So what happened? They have no idea we exist. And so we want to make sure that the city knows we're here and that we're available. And by the way, we're going to cast a little vision because we want to buy this building over the next few years, which is going to be kind of awesome. But we also want to buy the Rite Aid across the street because it's for lease and everyone needs drugs. And no, it's empty. And we want to buy that Rite Aid and turn it into this, which would be pretty cool. And we want to have the greatest space in the world for people to experience the life that only Jesus brings. We want to be an epicenter of human creativity and development. We want people to identify Jesus with the most creative, inventive, imaginative, kind, compassionate people on the planet. And so I'm going to invite you to join us in giving. And this is the QR code you can go to give. But before you give, I want to tell you a wonderful story. We had someone here yesterday. Anybody have an Apple Watch? I guess your Apple Watch can tell you if you're going to have a heart attack. Well, their Apple Watch, I guess, started going off like they were going to have a heart attack. Is that accurate? Because him and his wife had a conversation with God the night before. And I want Greg Snodgrass to come up and tell us what that conversation was. Come on, would you guys give him a hand? All right, I'm gonna ask you a few questions.
Okay.
A lot of people here are meeting you for the first time.
Okay.
And what you do for a living is kind of cool. So could you tell us a little bit about yourself and then also your family?
Yeah, sure. It actually, earlier when they were playing that conversation between you and Kim, kind of moving to LA, it's a very similar experience that my wife Kim and I had, where we realized LA is the epicenter of the film business, and that is a way to reach the entire world, right? You can be right here and go everywhere. So we moved out here in 2009, and I work now at a studio, but I worked in independent film. I was a lawyer. I do business affairs now, just help make a movie, an artist's vision, come to life, right? And be seen by as many people as possible. So,
you just finished doing Wicked.
Yes, yeah. We just finished that,
yeah. Which is pretty cool. Which is pretty cool. But tell us about your family.
Okay, yeah. So that's me on the left. We can move over.
We would have never figured that out. Thank you for the clarity.
Next to me is my daughter, Grace. She's 15. Then that's my wife, Kim. And then that's my younger daughter, Anna. She's 13. And this picture was actually taken the last night in Hollywood. Of the 422 baptisms you mentioned earlier, 2 of them are in that photo right there.
That's amazing. Come on. So good. So on Friday night, you and Kim were here.
Yes.
And then on Saturday night, your Apple Watch told you you're about to have a heart attack?
Yeah, you said you were gonna have a Q&A session, and immediately my whole body just was like it caught on fire. My watch was saying, your heart rate's way too high for somebody sitting in a chair, all that kind of stuff.
So what was causing your heart rate to go up?
Well, so Friday night, you shared a lot of the same information that you shared with us today, a lot of these big visions, goals, and dreams. And on the drive home, Kim and I were just talking about how much Mosaic has meant to us over these last 16 years. But then also, there's even bigger things ahead of us, right? And it's a bit of a reset. And we were just discussing what we could do to participate in this. And so we decided that we were going to increase our giving by 1% of our income for next year. So we've been tithing, but that doesn't feel like enough in this moment.
But that wasn't what was causing your heart to race, was it?
Yes, right. That's beautiful.
You've increased by 1% from 10% to 11%.
Right.
Which is awesome. We can celebrate that.
But no.
I know you.
Yeah.
And you did that, and that did not cause your blood pressure to go up.
That's right. When you said there was going to be a Q&A, I knew I needed to stand up and challenge the people that I am with, my tribe, Mosaic, just who else is going to join me and Kim in making that decision. So that's why my heart was shooting out through my chest.
Well, then do it again.
Okay. All right. So just want to be really clear. This is, if you give 0% right now, what I want to challenge you to do is to start giving 1% of your income to Mosaic. If you give 10%, I want to challenge you to level up to 11, wherever you are, just to take one more step up. And if you're here and you're going to do that, you're willing to do it, make that commitment, then just stand up.
So if that's your commitment, but don't do it if you're not ready, but stand up if you join us. So if you're at 0, moving to 1. If you're at 4, moving to 5. If you're at 10, moving to 11. If you're at 20, moving to 21.
They should be up here telling us how to be generous.
Yeah. That's why I hesitated. If you're at 20, I want to know who you are.
Yeah.
Awesome. All right, beautiful. Look around you. This is a response to your obedience. It's so beautiful. And by the way, I want you to look at those who are standing, and I want you to look at Greg, and I want you to realize that you are what a maker of the way looks like. You are a maker of the way. And I just love the fact that you picked up the mat before any of us in that moment. And I could not be more honored to follow you in this and to celebrate what God has done in your and Kim's heart. And Kim and I have already decided what we would do, and which will be more than a 1%, because you've inspired us that I'm competitive. And,
all right, bring it on.
Yeah. So all of us together, because what we're going to do this year is going to be extraordinary. So Greg, thank you. We love you so much, you and Kim. Thank you. All right, have a seat for just a moment. I'm going to let you guys go home in just a second. If you're here and this is your first time, I want you to realize that we're doing all this for you. The reason we talk about giving and sacrificing is not for ourselves, but because we know that Jesus is genuinely what you need. And we want to create a space for you to process that and discover Him. And so I hope you realize that these people are sacrificially giving, not even knowing you, because you matter to them, because you matter to God. And so we're going to take a moment, we're going to give together. You can either place your gift in the bucket, or you can go to the QR code. And let me encourage you, if you're not yet a recurring giver, to become a recurring giver. You can pass the buckets. And if you are a recurring giver and you want to increase that gift, do that today. But some of you may actually have a one-time gift that God really places on your heart to give. And I just want to encourage you to do that today or over the next few weeks, so we can go into next year with power. We would have never made it through the months of the fire and the devastation without the giving in November and December from 2024, giving us a war chest for 2025. And so even as those buckets are passed, I want you just to really take a moment and reflect. Am I on the mat? Am I being carried? Who am I carrying? And what kind of price or sacrifice am I willing to make to get others to the feet of Jesus? Let's climb some houses. Let's open up some roofs. Let's drop some mats in front of God. Let's love people more than we love things, because things don't last, but people are eternal. And let's do good, whether we ever get acknowledged or thanked, because the reward is not from the thanks of others, but from the thanks of God. When he says to us, well done, my good and faithful servant. Let's stand together and close in prayer. If you're here and you're on a faith search, there are going to be people outside. We'd love to give you a Bible and place it in your hands and help you begin to connect to who Jesus is. Father, I thank you so much for each person who is here today. Thank you, God, that together we're laying a foundation for the future. Thank you that you have changed our hearts and our lives so that we can give our lives to help other people find hope and love and meaning and life in your Son, Jesus. We are honored, Jesus, to carry your message forward. We are honored, Jesus, to represent you in the city and across the world. We are honored to bear the sacrifice that reflects your sacrifice for all of humanity. We pray in your name, Jesus. Amen. God bless you guys. We'll see you next week.